Welcome to this workshop of Galicia Innovation Days. The next 2 hours are going to be devoted to transborder cooperation to fight the great forest fires. We're going to hear about Firepoctep project and other European projects that have the same goal. We're going to hear about the importance of technology and knowledge in the prevention of forest fires, and we're going to have the opportunity of hearing a person responsible of European projects. And there'll be 2 panels, one in which we're going to try to answer the question how to prevent forest fires, and the other one on how this transborder cooperation can contribute to it. I would like to remind all the assistants that simultaneous translation is available. So if you want to hear everything in English, you can hear it in English, clicking on the translation. First of all, I would like to welcome Almudena Justo, who's the Director of Innovation and European Programs in FEUGA. So, Ms. Justo, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Aida, for the introduction, for the presentation. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session that we are celebrating in Galicia Innovation Days in order to give visibility to the transborder cooperation to stop the great forest fires. This session is organized by the project Interreg Firepoctep, which puts together similar projects that are looking for promoting the strengthening of the prevention and extinction systems for forest fires, and also promoting the transborder cooperation in order to fight fires. As we know, great forest fires are more and more frequent. In the words of Carmelo Vela, worldwide, we are losing every hour a surface of forest of equivalent to 800 football fields. Preserving the forest is essential to struggle against this climate emergency. They are the key for the preservation of our ecosystem, and they are our opportunity of mitigating the effects of climate change. Spain and Portugal, unfortunately, are 2 of the countries in Europe which are most affected, have been most affected by a number of fires, and also by a number of hectares that have been burned. Projects such as Firepoctep that are focused on the cross-border area of both countries are essential. The best practices that are implemented through these projects will be transferred to other risk areas in Europe where the great forest fires are becoming more and more common. From FEUGA, we participate in projects that belong to this type of actions, and we want to minimize the influence of borders between the different countries of the European Union. We want to stimulate the cooperation, and we want to help get to know the economic, social, and cultural conditions of the European territory. From FEUGA, we have participated in 10 programs financed by Interreg, 16 financed by Horizon 2020, and 3 financed by Erasmus+. With our new financial framework, we expect to add more and more projects and success stories, such as the ones that we are presenting now, working together with partners such as the Agency of the Environment of Andalucía, the Council of Andalucía, or FINNOVA, who's here with us now. We're going to start by presenting the Firepoctep project in the words of Inmaculada, who is in charge of analysis and management of knowledge of the regional government of Andalucía. Then we will have an explanation from FINNOVA and FEUGA about the importance of technological transfer in fire prevention. Next, we will have 2 panels, 2 roundtables, and then we will have some time for questions and answers and for deepening in some of the topics that could be interesting. We want to thank all the speakers for participating in this session, and we also want to thank all the participants for being here with us today. Without further delay, we will start now. Thank you very much, Almudena Justo. We're now going to continue with the presentation of the project. First of all, I will remind people in English that there is simultaneous translation.
You can also listen this session in English, completely in English. We have a team of interpreters dedicated to you. So if you want to listen all the interventions in English, you just have to click on translation and it will be everything in English. So now we continue in Spanish. Continuamos ahora, como decía,
We're now
vamos a
going to continue. We're going to deepen in the presentation of the Firepoctep project. In these details of the project, and in order to speak about it, we don't have Inmaculada, who wasn't able to be here with us, but we have Francisco Senra, who is the head of area analysis and management of knowledge in the environmental agency and water agency in Andalucía. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting us. It is a real pleasure being a part of this seminar, and I will try to communicate the image of the project, of this project and others, and I would like to tell you about this financial opportunity that this type of European projects are for all of us. I'm going to share a screen if you let me do so. Can you see it properly? Yes, we can see it perfectly. I will make a brief presentation of about 9 minutes. My role is, I am the person, the technical responsible of the Environmental Agency of Andalucía, and I work together with Inmaculada, who is the coordinator of the project in representation of the Council of Agriculture and Farming of the Andalucía. I'm going to make a brief presentation and I will be a part of the panel. If anybody wants to know any more details about the great forest fires in the context of climate change or global change that we are. Poptec project is a part of Interreg project between Spain and Portugal, and it is divided into 6 different cooperation areas, which follows this territorial distribution. The project Firepoctep is it includes several regions. It includes all the border between Portugal and Spain. This is a project which is a part of the thematic goal 5, which is promoting the adaptation to climate change and specifically the promotion of investment to face all the specific risks of this type of problems, which in some occasions they are catastrophes caused by forest fires. Part of this project was adopted in January 2021, and the last 2 years, it ends in December 2022. This is one of the great challenges of the project because the partnership that I'll show you includes several administrations and public institutions. The times and the administrative management of this type of projects, we can have virtues, but of course we must say that we're not very agile in terms of budget management and concession of loans and management of grants and so on. That is the biggest challenge of this type of project, being able to be timely. The budget is 5.6 million euros. The self-finance is 25% of the total. So the financing is 75% and the rest is covered by the different partners that are part of this project. The main goal of the project is strengthening the cross-border system between Spain and Portugal in the context of climate change, but at the same time, taking advantage of the opportunity of investing in forest areas, in many cases, areas that are depressed. Maybe that's not the the right concept. Is there's areas where there's a need of development for jobs in the rural areas, which have been also strongly affected by COVID-19. We have to identify the strategic areas for the management. We must promote the public investment. We want to minimize the impact of these great forest fires that will reach these territories. Sooner or later, we must promote public and private investment by means of pilot experiences. And we must also participate in education with training programs and workshops that we can incorporate, we can provide to different agents in the territory, not only the partners. Here you have the list of beneficiaries. We have 21 beneficiaries, which is a great opportunity, but it's also a great challenge. This is one of the problems we have in a project such as this one. It's an opportunity because what type of program works with administrations, regional or provincial administration, and also regions in Portugal, also foundations, research centers, universities, associations. This allows us to solve different projects, carry out different actions in a multidisciplinary way with different actors and different approaches. And this is, of course, a great opportunity. And the challenge is coordinating 21 partners in 2 years. That's also, well, another challenge. The space includes multiple regions. It includes the whole border from the south, Huelva, Algarve, until we get to Alto Miño and all the other regions. It's a very ambitious and beautiful project, which includes the diversity of the whole territory. The territory is divided into 4 main activities. First one is the analysis of the impact of the climate change. We want to assess the risk of large fires. And there's 4 pilot areas. In each one of these pilot areas, we want to focus on some kind of specificity, a situation in which each pilot area is different to the other pilot areas. For example, in the province of Huelva, we deal with areas that have gaps in the forest management. The red one, pilot area 1, is the one that's coordinated by the provincial government of Huelva, and the regions of Algarve and Huelva are very active. The focus is on the management of forest areas and the use of biomass in an area of great forest fires. Pilot area 2, it's close to Sevilla. It's a protected area where we use experiences of farming, cattle farming, and we want to manage this territory for fires. Pilot area 3 is in Cáceres. It's coordinated by the University of Extremadura, different partners, among them the region of Coimbra, and it's related to the Mosaic project. And it is a really, really interesting project where we take advantage of the different uses of the territory to generate wealth and resources. And then we have pilot area 4, another cross-border pilot area like the first one, where the University of Vigo participates together with the region of Alto Miño. And it's a way of working with the specificities of this area as opposed to other areas in Cáceres and in the south. So we have a great panoramic vision of the project, and this allows us to transfer all the developments of the projects to the 4 pilot areas. In this way, we're going to have a different participation in the different areas with the specificities. We're going to do an analysis adapted to each territory, and we're going to plan the prevention of big fires in different contexts with different actors, which is a great advantage for the project. In activity number 2, I'll go fast about this. This is about good governance, about investment that allows the operational cooperation and using all the best practices and the experience of the partners. This is going to allow us to make some investment in materials and equipment. We are planning on acquiring a truck, pumps, for water pumps in order to give support for small fires in urban forest areas. And we also want to invest in buying drones and cameras. This gives us the opportunity to make an improvement with investment, which will be focused to different pilot areas. Activity 3 is coordinated by FINNOVA. It's focused on the promotion of training. There's a plan of awareness raising and the launching of different projects, of startups, of projects that start different synergies between different actors throughout the territory in the different pilot areas. And then we have the 4th activity, where the idea of Firepoctep is continuing other PopTech projects and other different projects that are included in the project. The project Silipo, for example, which is an important project which is focused mostly in Andalucía. Firepoctep has to use or take advantage of the results of other projects. So in this way, we collaborate between projects. There is a coordination activity. This is the budget that each partner works with. It's not a very big budget because we're for the proportional part that each partner has. So each part is relatively small, apart from, well, 2 of the partners that have a bit more budget. Activity 6 is about communication, and we're going to develop this in October next year, an international congress which will be specifically associated to the management and planification of territory in the context of climate change, because if we only with more media, we don't solve the problem. We have to respond to the emergency, but the problem behind these great fires has to be the management of the territory, an integrative management, counting with all the partners. This is what Firepoctep wants. This is what I wanted to convey. I hope I haven't spoken for too long. No, it's been perfect. Thank you very much for your presentation. Now that we have heard about the project, we're going to get into greater detail. We're going to talk about the importance of transfer of technology and knowledge in the prevention of forest fires. We're going to speak again with Almudena Justo.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon again. Thank you, Aida, for this introduction. I'm going to share my screen. Just a moment. Sorry. Here it is. Can you see it properly? Yeah?
Yes, we can see it perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So welcome to everybody. In this presentation, I would like to highlight the relevance of technology transfer and multi-actor approach in forest fires innovation and prevention. I mean, the relevance of reaching the different stakeholders to achieve an adequate implementation of new technologies to prevent forest fires. I cannot move it. Okay, here it is. So, first of all, a brief introduction of FEUGA. We are a non-profit private foundation with more than 30 years of experience in knowledge and technology transfer. So we participate in more than 30 European Union projects as innovation managers. I mean, as partners for communication, dissemination, intellectual property, and exploitation. We participate in these projects thanks to our strong positioning in Europe through our presence in several EU platforms and other initiatives at EU level. So, in the field of technology transfer, I'm going to focus now in the multi-actor approach and how to engage stakeholders for co-creation following the European Innovation Partnership on Agriculture Interactive Innovation Model. The traditional top-down linear model of knowledge transfer from science to end users is outdated. Knowledge no longer only flows in one direction. Challenges in agriculture and forestry are becoming more and more complex, so it is necessary to see them from different angles. So, to ensure that project results are implemented in practice, it's essential to work together. The multi-actor approach brings the right people together from science to practice, involving anyone who can help tackle the objective of the project. All experience and knowledge are therefore taken into account, and partners create results together to answer real problems. So, it means that partners with complementary types of knowledge, scientific, practical, or other type of knowledge must join forces in the project activities from the beginning to the end. Now, I'm sharing with you the European Innovation Partnership on Agriculture guidelines for the multi-actor approach. Okay, so these guidelines, as you can see in the slide, the idea is to target real life needs and problems and opportunities, to put together complementary types of knowledge through the collaboration with different type of consortium partners, including also farmers, foresters, and other end users, and of course involving multipliers that facilitate the replication of the project results. So the idea is to implement knowledge exchange activities and to facilitate discussions, also including the so-called operational groups, to obtain practical information, obtaining the so-called by the EAP the practice abstracts. Okay, so these are the guidelines for this multi-actor approach to enhance the knowledge and technology transfer. So we in FEUGA have been working on that, designing and boosting these demand-driven interactive innovation models through our participation in several projects at EU level, such as Horizon 2020, AFINET, Tropic Safe, Roadmap, and Soil Agro, among others. Here you are some of our most relevant publications and oral communications in this field. You have here the links in case you want to have a look about how we implement this multi-actor approach guidelines. So in Firepoctep, we will apply our previous knowledge for the definition of open innovation methodologies in the rural environment, applying the multi-actor approach to strengthen the cross-border systems for the prevention and extinction of forest fires. In this project, we collaborate with FINNOVA, that are also experts in this field. And now my colleague Héctor from FINNOVA will explain to you the tech transfer work that we are developing in this Firepoctep project. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Miss Almudena Justo. Muchas gracias, Almudena Justo. Y para hablar sobre fondos europeos y posibles
In order
oportunidades.
to talk about European funds and possible opportunities, we will listen to Héctor Juan Armas. Before that, I would like to remind you that we are going to share all the presentations and videos. Everything is being recorded, so after the meeting, you'll have the possibility of having access to them.
All the videos, we are recording all the presentations, all the interventions, so they will be available for the ones who want to watch them anytime. Ahora continuamos, como decía, para hablar sobre fondos.
As I was saying, we're going to keep on talking about European funds and possible opportunities. Héctor Juan Armas from the FINNOVA Andalucía office. Thank you for being with us.
Vamos allá. Bueno, como estaba diciendo mi...
As I was saying, well, as Almudena said, I represent FINNOVA, and I am going to talk about the project we are working on. I'm going to tell you some details about the project, specifically the technology transfer and new opportunities to access European financing, which can help to sustain the Firepoctep program and other programs. If you have an innovative idea, which is ripe enough, you can talk to us. We are a specialist in the obtention of European funding. And as I was saying before, Francisco mentioned the effect of the Firepoctep project, how it was being implemented in the Raya region between Portugal and Spain as a cross-border project. As for the new European funds scenarios, we're going to talk about the LIFE program and the new call. For those of you who are not familiar with it, this is a financial instrument from the European Union focusing on the environment exclusively. It has over 900 projects in Spain, as we will see in a graph in a few minutes, with a total budget of 1.5 billion euros and a possible contribution of the European Union up to 781 million euros. LIFE in general can provide support to different entities, large and small private companies or entities in Spain through foundations and other ways of financing as well. As I was saying, I would like to say that Italy and Spain, we are experts in obtaining LIFE financing for innovative ideas within the framework of the environmental programs. We have a successful line, which can be good and encouraging to keep on working on this financing line. There are two main lines, the one focusing on the environment and the other focusing on climate actions. In the field of environment, we have the sub-program for nature and biodiversity, the sub-program for circular economy and quality of life. And then in the field of climate action, which has 1.9 billion euros for financings, there's a program for the mitigation of climate change. This is and there's a new program called the sub-program for the transition towards clean energies with 997 million euros as budget. Now we will see the dates in the new financing framework. We are talking about 5.402 billion euros for the 2029 to 2027 period. You can see the link here with all the presentation. and you can check all the steps to follow. I'm going to summarize them. There are 4. First, the launch has been called already. You have the link here. The CINEA agency, it's the European Executive Agency for Climate, Infrastructure and Environment. This program is coordinated together with some others. You have the link here. The second step. This has to do with finding the call. This is usually the most difficult task. How does my innovative idea fit within the different sub-programs of life? What is the innovative feature that it can provide, and what kind of long-term results it can provide? So first, we need to identify the call, and I will add show a summary so that you can compare. Then we have the third step, directly related with the forms. There's a support area for submitters. You can check it here in this link, support for applicants. There's also the national contact point in case you have any doubt. As you recall, each country has a national contact point. And also there's a frequent questions area. These are tools that I encourage you to use if you want to focus on these technical calls. The fourth step has to do with assessment criteria. This is quite a dense slide. So the most important thing is that on slide 3, we have the complementarity of the funds. This is a new initiative. How can we supplement the subsidies that were requested from the European Union for our project? How can they supplement other subsidies? This is a win-win situation because you can have more points in your candidacy. This is one of the criteria to take into account, as well as the impact, the scalability to other territories, and the resources to be requested. Step 5. Here we have the call for the environment and climate action. There are 2 programs here and some key data to the right regarding the co-financing and the deadline. The first 3 are almost over. They will finish by the end of November 2021, but the new one, there's a bit more space until January 12th, 2022. Just for you to take into account. As I promised, here you have the links of the different calls, which is important. You need to know what are the challenges that you are going to face. Out of the 4 sub-programs, there are different calls, and here you have all the information which is necessary in order to submit a project. I don't have much more time left. Just quickly, the European Innovation Council, this new instrument has an accelerator related with subsidies for SMEs mainly, and also the Pathfinder has to do with researchers or consortia with at least 3 entities from 3 different member states or associated countries. There are several ways of or forms of subsidies. The accelerator focuses mostly on the creation of business incubators, and Pathfinders focuses on technological solutions and their transfer, like in the Firepoctep project. There's a summary of the different stages, and in July, the business plan has to be presented. Then there are 3 weeks for the general agreement. Well, as a summary, since I don't have much time, the EIC accelerator, which used to be called SME instrument, is part of the European Council of Innovation. The European Union values this potential even if there is a high level of risk, but said the subsidies can cover 70% of the total cost of the project, own funds up to 15 million, and then there is a business mentoring service, as well as other business acceleration programs. In the case of SMEs, they need to be profit-making companies and have their headquarters in a member state of the European Union. The application is sent and then it is assessed. You would be invited to Brussels for the presentation, and in order to present this proposal, you need to follow the templates that you have in the links. Here we can see some firewall projects. It's a technological transfer like we do in the Firepoctep project. I would like to thank FEUGA for the organization of this event and for giving us the time to participate and to contribute together with our colleagues from Northern Spain, from Galicia. Thank you, Héctor, for your intervention. Now we are going to move to the first roundtable of this workshop. We're going to try to give an answer to the way of preventing great wildfires. We have Martin Brusmayer, coordinator of the project from the University of Hohenheim. Welcome. Carmen Seco Garcia, the head of the preventive actions units of the environmental department of the Xunta de Galicia, and Juan Picos, professor and researcher at the engineering department of the environment from the University of Vigo. Welcome. We're going to start with Mr. Brusmayer. You are going to be the first.
One forest project, if I understood correctly. So all yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I'll share my screen. And I hope you can all see it very well.
Yes, we can see it.
Well, thank you very much. Also, thank you for the invitation to these innovation days. I would like to present you our project, One Forest. It's funded by the Horizon program, Horizon 2020, with about 19 partners. We started this year and will work in this project until 2024. The title of our project, it's very long, but still it also shows what we will be doing. It's a multi-criteria decision support system, which we like to develop for, in general, very forest management, but also to strengthen the forest resilience, which also includes the forest fires. We want to harmonize the stakeholder interests and ensure also the wood flows. Well, why are we doing this, and what is the background of the project? It's the European forests change or have major challenges ahead, and some of those are climatic. We have increasing vulnerability to storms, but also the droughts, heat waves and insects, but also forest fires. And when you have already a lot of experience in the Mediterranean area or in the Iberian Peninsula, it's also that in Central Europe or Northern Europe, forest fires are much more common in the last decades because of these record droughts and heat waves we all had. So knowledge transfer here is very important as well. And besides the forest fires and all the climatic changes, the European forests also should contribute to climate protection, as well as supply the forest industry or the wood industry, the wood processing industry, especially in the alpine areas. We still have avalanches. We want the retention of rainwater. So lots of different challenges we have to face, and also the tourists. So if we are making decisions, these decisions become much more complex and difficult when we talk about forest management in general. So what's the objective of our project? We would like to help people make easier decisions or support them with their decisions. So we would like to develop a multi-criteria decision support system. This is for the sustainable forest management, which is again part also with managing forest fires. Maybe I can tell here we have 90 partners in this project. 2 of those are also in Spain, in Catalonia, with the CTFC and the CC4. So they are also representing these parts. And we also would like to make a reliable wood supply. We have different methodological approaches for that, to integrate also all interests of different stakeholders, from NGOs to forest managers, forest owners, to all the wood processing industry stakeholders. So taking very many indicators and dimensions into account. And we will do this or work in 4 different case studies. One will be in the boreal, so in the northern hemisphere, in the Swedish and Estonian forests. In the continental part will be several federal states of Germany. We have the Alpine region as well, with Switzerland, Austria, and Slovenia. And in the Mediterranean with Spain, especially will be in the part of Catalonia and Italy. And so in the end, if we have this multi-criteria decision support system, someone can decide where to look for, in which region am I, so which indicators can I use. Well, I would like to tell you a little bit more about our approach, what we are really doing, and how this, this tool in the end will look like. So if we look in the upper left, all the different data from the case study regions for forest management, which tree species do we have, soil, etc. We will collect in these case study regions together with forest operations, so which management systems are already used. And we will then define several indicators on a policy analysis. We will do lots of interviews and stakeholder approaches to know what are the wishes, what are the demands by the different stakeholders. And all these data will then flow into a material flow analysis. So which wood do we have for the processing industries? Where are these wood flows going? And then also using a dynamic value chain model to see which interdependencies, or so which different indicators are influencing other indicators. So is the forest fires, are they influencing the biodiversity? Yes, of course, but somehow we have to show this and also do this via dynamic value chain model. And all this together will then be in the multi-criteria decision support system to, in the end, have a tool where to look for how to work with these different demands we have, and also get some solutions out of it. The expected impact is that we have several sustainability development goals in our head, in our mind. Of course, we'll have some innovations like this support system, but also we'll work on a topsoil cover. So this is more for planting, but also for having less erosion in the world. Then, of course, general terms, climate protection, but also very sustainable forest and wood management. Well, for starting this roundtable, and very short thank you also for organizing these innovation days. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you have any, just let me know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brusmaya. Muchas gracias, Martín Brusmaya. Ahora vamos a escuchar a Carmen.
Now we are going to give the floor to Carmen Segovia from the Rural Areas Department of the Junta de Galicia. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us to be with you today and for the interest that you show in our preventive program. I'm trying to open my presentation. Can you see it? Well, not really.
Esperamos un poquito a ver si...
We'll just wait a couple of seconds.
Ahora. ¿La estáis viendo?
De momento no. De
Can
momento
you see it?
aparecen los recuadros de los participantes, pero la presentación...
Not yet.
verla.
We cannot see the presentation yet.
Ahora parece que ha empezado a compartir.
Well, now it seems it's working.
Habría que poner... Ahí está. Perfecto, gracias.
Well, my apologies. Since the creation of the wildfire prevention system,
No estoy consiguiendo pasar ahí.
well,
Bueno, pues que desde la creación de los servicios de
since the
defensa
creation of the wildfire prevention system, we focus on wildfire prevention as a set of actions with the aim of reducing the risk that could generate wildfires, and also when we have wildfires to prevent other risks of propagation and to carry out preventive actions to minimize the damage that these wildfires could generate. The legal framework is found in the law from April the 9th, which has been 2007, which has been modified several times, as well as a defense plans, which establishes the actions and a prevention plan. It's important when organizing the planning and the prevention to take into account that the actions to be developed imply or involve many agents. There are several administrations, the regional administrations, different units participate, as well as public entities, both private and public entities and citizens. It's a difficult task, but it's essential. And all these parties need to participate. In terms of prevention, there are actions focusing on the territory and on the general population. Among the actions focusing on the population, we have sociological actions for awareness raising, also to train in terms of forestry, preventive alert systems, modifications of our regulation. And for the first time, we have a training program for the rural population. As for the actions focused on the territory, they are done in a complementary basis on rural areas and forestry areas and in biomass networks. Both lines need to be complemented because it is essential to organize the territory for prevention, but also to protect the many dispersed population centers spread around in Galicia. What are these networks of biomass? This is the system that we have to manage biomass. These are biomass strips placed in strategic locations. The idea is to break the horizontal and vertical continuity of biomass. We have primary, secondary, and tertiary networks. Primary strip networks are lines that are placed along the highway system and conventional roads, as along railways and along other infrastructures to produce electricity, natural gas, etc. The actions carried out in these primary strips focus on managing the biomass and eliminating trees of some species. And here you can see some examples of primary strips. I'm not going to focus on them because I don't have the time to do so. As for secondary strips, they focus mainly on the protection of population centers. In this case, strips need to be managed by the owners of the plots of land. These are done in a perimetral way around population centers and isolated houses. Here we can see some examples. The secondary strip was cleansed, and some other examples of planification of these strips. Tertiary networks are mainly placed in forest areas, and they are linked to the infrastructure of prevention against wildfires or forest fires. Here we see some examples of tertiary strips which were planned for these years, firewalls, these are strips that work as firewalls mainly. In order to carry out these preventive actions, we have several instruments. On the one hand, instruments to do preventive works, to open access points to water, as well as program burnings. These images are from this year. There are also agreements with different administrations and entities, with local entities and with regional governments. There's also an agreement between the Galician government, FEUGA, and SEAGA, which is a public Galician company. The idea is to create a system to manage biomass in these secondary strips around towns, and they work pretty well, actually. Another way of acting is through works contracts co-financed by the PDR, and also there are subsidies through which people living in these areas can finance the selective control of biofuel in these areas and water access points. There are complementary actions for prevention which have been forced lately, one of which is model villages. The Agadir is in charge of this project. This is part of a new law that was passed in May this year. Also, agroforestal polygons. And in this case, both mother villages, the idea is to give value to the land, to make to use abandoned plots of land for other uses. Also, all the actions by the general department have an impact on forest fires. There's also a line of subsidies to cover the repairs after wildfires, and also for common shared forests. And also there's a plan for grazing areas which tries to make a better use of natural resources, and to prevent wildfires by using cattle to prevent combustions. These are the actions that we are doing right now, but we see that forest fires are a complex problem which requires the participation of many different actors for the prevention in order to be effective, and also in other territorial plannings. So this is a challenge for us.
The fire service is very experienced in Galicia. We have acquired experience throughout the years. There's been a great technological development too, and we need to use this in a daily work, developing technology to develop better the territorial actions, and also communicating the information to the citizens so that the owners of the territories of the lands know what to do. The demographic changes have changed the scenery, have increased the problem of fires. We have now forests with too much biomass. There's a reduction of the distance between the forest and the villages. There's been a great accumulation of biomass in the interface areas. Now fire is more and more aggressive and produces situations that cannot be extinguished. In order to prepare ourselves for this scenario, we have to create sceneries, landscapes that are resistant to this. We have to recover the use of cattle in the areas that can be done. We have to manage forests properly, and we have to do some trimming, some firewalls in order to break the continuity of the biomass. We also have to promote the mosaic landscape, which is so typical of Galicia in the past, and that is resilient for the problem of great fires. We must promote initiatives for the harmonization of lands, recovery of cultures and of crops, with the interface fires, which are more and more frequent. We need to create secondary strips and fulfill our obligations. We must improve the regulations and the procedures. We have to do the grubbing of these areas and valorization of these lands. These are our challenges. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Carmen Seco, from the Service of Preventive Measures from the Council of Rural Areas of the Xunta of Galicia. Now we have Juan Picos, who is a researcher and teacher, professor of the Department of Engineering of the University of Vigo. You have the floor. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Aida, for the presentation. Let me share my slides. I hope I do this right. And I hope you can see it. Let's see if I can see both things at the same time on my screen. Good afternoon. I'm going to tell you about the work we're doing in the School of Forest Engineering of the University of Vigo in the Firepoctep project. Apart from the 21st partners that are part of the consortium of Firepoctep in the University of Vigo, we have 5 research groups. I'm only going to tell a fifth of our contribution to the project, which corresponds to activity 1, the one related to prevention in the territory. As it has already been said, we are working this pilot area number 4, which is cross-border between the High Minho, which is Portuguese, and the Lower Minho River, which is from Portugal. This represents the tendency of Atlantic climates within the different areas of the border. The climate we have in this area is quite special. It's not completely Atlantic, as you see in the Köppen climate classification. It is Atlantic 9 months and Mediterranean for 3 months. In spite of this high rains, we have a period of drought in the summer. This produces some problems in relation to forest fires because, of course, biomass is accumulated for many months. It grows really fast, grows a lot during the rain season, and during the summer there's no rains, and this biomass is available for fires. This is one of the areas that are expected to be more affected by the climate trends if this implies the increase of the drought period, the combination of rich vegetation and prolonged extended drought periods that might cause greater problems than the ones we are seeing. We're also in the place where the use of fire is traditional. We have a lot of fuel and also fires caused by the population. As an example of this area, cross-border area, are the fires that between 2005 and 2008. This is an area which has been clearly affected by fires, and the work of the pilot area is mostly on the mountain ranges of Argallo, in the area of Baixo Minho and Cordavico of the north of Portugal. Here you can see it a bit better, the area in which we're going to be working. Part of our goal is to try to anticipate, act before the fire takes place, being able to determine in each part of the landscape what the contribution to the fire could be. If you are interested in cinema, we're going to try to do what Tom Cruise used to do in Minority Report, trying to detect who is the person that has to be arrested before the problem happens. What we have to detect is which is the area in which it's more efficient to intervene in order to avoid the generation of a fire that exceeds our extinguishing capacity. These are the landscapes of the area where we're going to be working. In the past, we have detected that the behavior of fires, regardless of the meteorological and social factors, has a lot to do with the situation of the territory regarding the vegetation and the biomass. You have here images of a fire in 2006 and another fire in 2019. These were happening in different meteorological circumstances and with starting points that were different. But the area that was burned was more or less the same. There is a memory of the territory, so there is a way of detecting the risk. In the right side of the image with the yellow background, you can see the fire of 2007 and 17, and in the right, the combination of fires of 2005 and 2006 in the same area with different weather conditions, and in the second case, adding 2 years. And there is an evidence that of the areas that are going to be affected. We have to detect where we have opportunities to avoid history repeating, becoming worse every time. Some areas of intervention, potential areas of intervention that allow us to analyze the fires after they have happened. This is the area of Paradela in Ponte Candelas. This comes from the bottom to the top part. That was the path that the fire followed. There are some areas that resisted the passing of the fire. In the right, we have some eucalyptus that were trimmed and were not affected by the fire. In the central part, we have some oak trees near a river that were not affected by the fire either. In the right side, we have an archaeological park. We had been grubbed. It had no bushes, no vegetation when the fire came. Of these three examples, this archaeological area avoided the fire from moving to the west side. So the other parts could defend themselves, but could not stop the progression of the fire. So it's interesting to see how the landscape works. We have the fire of As Neves, where the placing of this farm and this path allowed us to stop this terrible fire and having it not affecting Oregueña and Aldea, which were the only areas of this municipality which were saved from the fire. So we see this after the fire has happened. So now we're trying to detect beforehand where these opportunities of stopping the fire could be. Now we're working mostly with simulation of fires. This is the pilot area of Valle Somiño, where we have been simulating fires, both with the history of the weather history, and also with weather conditions that we've not had yet, but we could have in the future. We have in each one of these squares, we have carried out different simulations for different scenarios in order to try to understand the evolution of these fires and how the change of some of the elements of the fuel of the biomass could give us opportunities of control. So our work is by using a simulator and introducing the characteristics of the medium, the geography, the orography, and how to detect all the ignitable materials. We cannot feed the simulator with false information. We must introduce all the data that are in the landscape, and we have to carry out simulations with a range of starting places, a range of synoptic conditions, a description of the situation of the ignitable materials, and also the possibility of media, of resources to act on the fire. This would give us a range of simulations that we should be able to add and classify, being able to detect for the range of simulations, the ways of development that are most interesting, how the change of the different areas could influence the evolution of the fires. This way, we would be able to find the places that are candidates to be stopped with our minority report, being able to know how we should act in some specific places and trying to help the work that the laws and administrations are carrying out, the ones that Carmen Seco has just explained to us. This model, where we should put this model villages, where we should promote these strips, because we do not have the funds to intervene in the whole territory all the time. So we have to detect where it is more efficient, what areas are more efficient to work on, to prepare. We have generated a family of simulations in 2 different weather scenarios, and in each one of these circles, we are marking fires that would be started in this square, and the red one would reach more than 2,000 hectares. The left one, number 1, is the really bad weather conditions for fire, and the scenario number 2 is better weather conditions, and we are detecting the areas that are more sensitive for the generation of great forest fires. This way we can approach little by little, detect the places where it is more efficient to install these prevention measures. I hope you have understood the explanation. Thank you very much, Juan Picos, for this very interesting presentation. We're going to start with the question type. I'm going to start in English because the first one is going to be for Martin Brusmeier.
And the first of them is for you, Mr. Bruce Maya, so I'll do it in English. How can farmers be more involved in good management practices for the prevention of major wildfires? ¿Cómo pueden estar más involucrados los agricultores en las buenas prácticas para evitar estos incendios?
Well, we try to do it with getting all these stakeholders on board and talk to them, do it in workshops so they get to know about what is happening. This is not only true for the forest fires, but for all management systems, which are also for storms and how they can save their forests for that.
Seguimos con más cuestiones. Esta es el agua Carmen Seco.
More questions. This one is for Carmen Seco. How could we manage from the Xunta of Galicia efficient practices in coordination with the institutions in the north of Portugal in order to fight jointly against cross-border fires? There are already European projects in place that are trying to reach this goal, not only the one we're talking about now, but also the project Forvario, which is also an Interreg project. What they're trying to do is collecting best practices for the prevention of fires in both countries. But besides this, we consider essential to have direct contact, which is regular and fluid. The technicians from both administrations should be working in close cooperation because administrative borders are not the natural borders, and the fires come from Portugal to Galicia and vice versa, depending on the direction of the wind. It would also be important to carry out joint simulations to identify possible scenarios that could happen. And there's also the protocols, the joint protocols we should have. In Pladiga, there's already a protocol in place for extinction of fires in border areas. And the last question I want to ask you, unless you want to ask a question yourself, because speakers can ask questions whenever they want. One, because the reforestation of Galician forests with autochthonous species, can it be combined with the wood exploitation in Galicia? Because there's an history of wood exploitation there. I'm going to use the topic, the cliche, in the Galician way. I'm going to say, well, it depends. Obviously, the state of vegetation when a fire comes for the intensity and the speed of propagation of the fire. Some vegetation placed in an area that has humid conditions is an opportunity from the point of view of fires. So that is part of what we're analyzing when we find a place where the fire can change, the propagation of fire could be worse. One of the possibilities is modifying the vegetation. Not every tree can be in every area. Oak trees, for example, that are 5 years old, that are only 2 meters tall. But if we're talking about adult oak trees, that would give us an opportunity for the extinguishing the fire. It's very important to know what to do and where, and about the opportunities of combining this function with the potential economic use of wood. It also depends. It's not only the benefits of wood production that has to be seen. Some species are not going to be profitable in some areas, but some other uses of this biomass that can be compatible with keeping the level of biomass for fires low. So all forest areas don't need to be submitted to production of wood. There is a community of mountains who are sacrificing their profitability in order to improve the protection of urban areas. Society has to be intelligent enough to compensate them for the work they're doing. I don't know if any speaker has a question, anything they want to ask, anything they want to add. I would like to say hello to Professor Chubieco, I would like to greet him because thanks to his research, many of us have started in teledetection, something that's going to help us a lot in this work. Thank you very much. I wanted to greet him. We will be listening to him very soon. Thank you. Martín Maya, Carmen Seco, Juan Vico. We're going to continue now with the second panel of this workshop. We have Emilio Chubieco prepared. As Juan Pico told us, this second panel is about cross-border cooperation in European projects in prevention and extinction of forest fires. Here we have Emilio Chubieco from the Department of Geology, Geography and Environment of the University of Alcalá, Alaya Estivili, who is the project manager in the area of research and development of the Foundation Pau Costa, and also Eva García Galaver, who is the coordinator of the Pyrenees Observatory of the Working Community of the Pyrenees. Welcome. We're going to start with Emilio Chubieco, who's going to tell us about the project Fire Risk. You have the floor. I don't know if you can see the screen. Thank you for the invitation. As the coordinator was saying, I'm going to present a European project very briefly, a project that was approved in the Horizon 2020 framework. It was the greatest, the biggest European project in the fight of forest fires at the time. Then there was another call in the Green Deal framework, and other projects were approved. Then we started this project in April. The request was in September 2020. I wanted to start with a video. Let's see if I can share this video with you.
Wildfires are increasingly threatening the environment and societies. They can lead to ecological and economic damage and loss of lives. Due to climate and land use changes, their extent and severity are increasing, posing great challenges in Europe and worldwide. The risk of a wildfire occurring depends on weather and fuel availability, human drivers like accidents and arson, but also on socio-economic aspects, such as land use and fire management strategies. To enable effective wildfire management, an integrated approach is necessary. Before a fire, improving fire risk assessment facilitates reducing negative fire impacts. Fire suppression must be carried out considering its full environmental and societal effect. Recovery actions should produce more fire-resilient landscapes and communities. The European project Fire Risk addresses these needs by fully integrating physical, socio-economic and political contexts into existing protocols. Its aim is to deliver a coordinated and science-based strategy for European wildfire management. It brings together 38 partners from all fire-related sectors, from researchers to first responders and authorities. Supported by citizen scientists, they provide the knowledge necessary to co-design effective solutions. To assess wildfire risk, it will use innovative methods for estimating and communicating fire danger and vulnerability. These include satellite and airborne sensors, geospatial analysis, meteorological and socio-economic modeling. To reduce fire risk, land management strategies will be evaluated to better manage fuel, and a new, near real-time tool for predicting fire behavior will be produced for decision-makers, from first responders to evacuation planners. To enable adapting to future risk, high-resolution climate scenarios will be complemented by demographic and socio-economic projections, as well as environmental policies. The resulting strategies will be implemented as pilot sites and demonstration areas across Europe, and all findings showcased via open access, providing valuable knowledge and tools for every stakeholder. With their work, Fire Risk partners aim to improve current wildfire approaches by providing updated fire science and management strategies towards a more resilient future for Europe and elsewhere.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Esto era un
Thank you very
resumen.
much. This was a summary that was prepared in the framework of the dissemination of the project. This was one of the companies that participated in the project. I think in 2.5 minutes, it summarizes pretty well what this project is about. It is to develop an integrated strategy based in the best possible science for the management of the risk of fire aimed at the reduction of this risk and the prevention of future scenarios of climate and socioeconomic change. The project is based on an integrated conception of risk that takes into account the aspects related to danger, defining danger, the possibility, the physical possibility of something burning or spreading the fire. And there we have the situation of the ignitable materials and also the water situation, both of the living and dead ignitable materials. We also take into account the weather conditions, the land situation, the vulnerability, the impact of fire on health and infrastructures, besides improving the resilience of the affected areas. This implies a wide analysis of different variables. We are going to use the systems of teledetection and the geographic databases, but also climate modelization, the modelization of the behavior of the fire, the spread of the emissions produced by the fire, and also the socio-economic elements and factors. We also want to take into account the different European policies that affect the fires, both of civil protection as of management of the rural areas and the new policies of green recovery, which the European Commission is promoting. We put special emphasis in extreme events, the ones that have a greater impact both on people and on nature, everything that has to do with the urban forest interface and the extension of this risk condition to other scenarios, such as the areas of the central part of Europe and Northern Europe. We are using a holistic approach that takes into account very different variables in an integrated risk structure that takes into account the importance of the danger conditions, the ignition and propagation, and the conditions of vulnerability, the exposure to risk, the loss of ecological or environmental values, as well as the loss of houses, infrastructures, and the impact on the health of people. The project has 8 work packages. The first packages are focused on the obtention of risk values, the second one to the reduction of the risk of the conditions of ignition and propagation, and the third one is about the mobilization of future scenarios. There's a packet about integration of information, another has to do with the pilot areas and demonstration areas, and a 6th package related to policy integration, outreach, networking, and dissemination. The European Union also asked us to have a package devoted to ethics issues. The project is going to be applied to 3 different space scales. One covers the whole European territory. There'll be another scale that would include the 5 pilot areas that include a single province, 3 in the Mediterranean, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, 1 in the central part of Europe, and 1 in Sweden, and 25 demonstration areas where very specific variables and elements will be analyzed. There is a communication plan which is quite wide. We want to have a strong interaction with society, and particularly with the managers of fires and of organizations that are affected by them, including rural owners, civil protection organizations, volunteers, and so on. Within this dissemination plan, we are also organizing seminars. At the moment, online seminars in different areas related to the core of the project, Next one will be in the month of December, and we are collecting information about the large fires in Greece, Turkey, and Algeria. There is an observatory that includes people from different areas and different countries that could contribute to facilitating relevant advice and guidelines for the project. As you see, some of them are international, such as Peter Moore, who has been working in the FAO, or Jesus San Miguel, who coordinates the activities of the Service of Information of Fires of the European Commission, and authorities related to these topics in different countries that are a part of the project.
There's also a steering committee, the main coordinator of which is Professor Viegas from Coimbra. I'm in charge of the scientific coordination, and also George Efidikis is in charge of the administration. The consortium is formed by 38 partners from 18 different countries, including, as we see, most of European countries which have problems with wildfires, and also 3 from outside the European Union. The consortium was created thinking about having different disciplines and organizations included in order to have this multidisciplinary approach. Here you can see the website of the project. It started in April, so far the information available is not excessive, but we'll hope to update it frequently so that all the developments from the project can be good for society as a whole. And that's it. That's everything I wanted to say. I'm at your disposal if there's any question. Thank you. Thank you, Emilio Chueco. Now we are going to move to the next problem. We will give the floor to Laia Seville. She will talk about the firing project. You have the floor. Thank you. Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for inviting us to this session. My colleague Lyndon couldn't come today. He's the lead of the thematic group on because we have many online events, so my apologies on behalf of him, but he helped me prepare this presentation. I also work in this project, so I hope to be able to clarify any doubts you have. The firing project, as you can see on the screen, is a project that tries to. My apologies, Mr. Stivel, you cannot see the presentation. I don't know what is happening exactly. Maybe you didn't share your screen, but we couldn't see anything so far. Well, you haven't missed anything important so far. Don't worry. This was just the first slide. We cannot see it yet. I think that you have to press on sharing screen.
Porque me decía que no puede compartir la pantalla.
Ahora ya lo tenemos, ¿eh? Lo estamos
Now we
viendo
can
ya.
see it. Now we can see it. Yes.
Muchas gracias, Aida.
Thank you very much, Aida.
Decía, bueno, que solo
So I was saying,
primera pantalla, con lo cual no se ha perdido nadie nada.
well, I don't think anyone missed anything important so far. The firing project.
Disculpen. El objetivo del proyecto,
The goal of
básicamente,
this project is to improve the national capability of emergency operatives, that is firemen, especially at a European level. One thing that we've seen in European projects is that a lot of the budget was allocated to projects that in the end were difficult to implement, or maybe end users couldn't use them in different fields for different reasons. What we try to do with the fire-in project is to to use these operatives since the very beginning so that they can interact with the industry and with researchers. The idea is to find what the needs of these operators are. We've carried out several activities in the project. We started detecting the operational gaps that we saw in the case of certain emergencies. On a second stage, we started looking for solutions. We talked with the industry, with researchers, to see what possible solutions could already exist that maybe because of a lack of transfer of knowledge or lack of contact between operators, researchers, and the industry were not at the disposal of operators. And then in the third stage, we tried to look to the future and see what are the future scenarios or the possible gaps and our main working lines. The idea is to create a European agenda and certain lines of work for the future. The project is structured on 5 thematic areas where these challenges or capabilities are defined. Solutions are, we look for solutions and then we provide some ideas. This is our 5-year-long project, which will finish next year. We are quite advanced in the project. As I said, it's organized in 3 cycles. As other projects presented here, we try to have the broader representativeness possible. We do not have partners from outside the European continent, but as I said, we wanted to have a broad representation. We have 5 other schools, research centers, centers for industrial development. So we have quite a broad distribution. These are the 5 thematic working groups: search and rescue, emergency response, structural fires, crisis mitigations in the case of landscape fires, natural hazard mitigation in the case of floodings, heavy snow, which is separate from wildfires in this case, and then chemical, biological, nuclear, or residues emergencies. With this, we have a network of experts. In the case of wildfires, the main goals were to analyze the drivers and the underlying causes that lead to an increase of the severity and vulnerability of European landscapes. Also, we try to exchange views across sectors, responsibilities, and also beyond borders. We also try to analyze the gaps, the ones that we have on the table right now, and the ones that we will have in the future, and also to define and prioritize where we have to invest, both in terms of research and development, so that this is productive for those who need to respond in the event of an emergency. Also, finding common capability challenges among all of us. Key challenges were identified. For instance, the uncertainty regarding the scenarios where to invest funds or where not to invest funds. Many countries invest a lot in resources, but there are wildfires that even if you have many resources, it's not enough because it can generate a collapse in the emergency system in many areas. So you also have to invest in other places. Also, interoperability issues, planning issues, that is taking into account the whole cycle of this emergency, are working at all levels in order to face them. Also, applied science and knowledge. The problem of the rural exodus in some areas. So where we used to have spaces with a certain mosaic of people, now there isn't. We do not have that. Also, awareness raising or the lack of awareness of some communities. We see that in some communities or collectives, they are not really aware about the risk or about what they have to do in such a situation, and also at the level of decision makers. Just to name a few, I would like to show an example, which is something also common. Interoperability, especially in cross-border regions. We see that there are many barriers for this interoperability so that it is effective at a cross-border level. Sometimes these barriers are language barriers. When we go down to the level of operators, not everyone speaks the same language, and usually in our everyday life we use different languages. So when you have to combine everything, it's difficult. There are also different emergencies and crisis management systems. Sometimes they are compatible, sometimes they aren't. That depends on previous collaborations. Also technical problems. Sometimes there are different procedures, ways of working, ways of training. That is what we found in terms of wildfires. In the case of community awareness, for instance, operators many times are seen as saviors of in the situation, but that's just one side. Society also needs to do its part. The role of some external factors like human migration. These are examples of things that we have found, but also when you put all emergencies together at the same time, many of the challenges were the same. It doesn't depend. It doesn't matter if it was a wildfire or a flooding. Many of the challenges were the same. That's why this matrix was designed with common challenges. It's available on our website. The idea is to put the focus on where to act in order to solve the problem. For instance, in cross-border regions, many times we face situations where there are many agencies, many leaderships, and in new wildfires that could lead to situations of uncertainty. Here we looked for different solutions, and what we did in the last part of the project was, okay, we know what the gaps are, what are the solutions. Let's see what we will have in the future and what we are going to face and what are the challenges. We propose two scenarios, a gradual one, that is, we will see gradual changes in the landscape. Can we adapt to these new wildfires that are coming? Are we going to learn and make progress? That's why we included some features here and different stresses. For instance, a demographic increase, new technologies, climate change, etc. That's the scenario that we propose to our experts. And then a second scenario, completely different, that is collapse. We cannot do it gradually, so maybe next year we have a huge wildfire or an extreme wildfire that can create this situation. That's the scenario that we proposed for analysis. What do we find in multi-agency situations like we find in cross-border regions? That is a large amount of organizations or a lot of information. Sometimes we have a lot of information but little time to analyze it. The strategic ownership, some actors may have the possibility of stopping the emergency given the resources that they have. Also, the need for cooperation, the misalignments between those who are facing the impact of the fire, those who control the risk, and who has knowledge, the right knowledge. These are the challenges that we face. Some ideas came out of all these in terms of prevention. Here we have just two examples to see where this goes to. In terms of prevention, we propose that it could become an integral part of the policies and the responsibilities in order to map existing networks also and to foster synergies. For each one of these, specific actions were proposed. We are working on this. As I said, we haven't finished yet, but just as an example. And with this, I will finish, Aida, don't worry. Dialogues, working groups, etc. I don't have time to mention them all. I just wanted to show you an overview. Why did we do all this? The next step will be to collect all this and send recommendations to the European Commission, both for the investments and for the research and development agenda for future years. If you want, you can find more information in our website. And of course, if there is any question, I'm at your disposal. Thank you very much for the kind attention. Thank you for your intervention, Laia. We'll move to the questions afterwards. But now we will listen to a third intervention, Eva García Balaguer, from the Pyrenees working group. Thank you very much, especially. Thank you for inviting me. First of all, my apologies. As you see, I'm not Juan Terrades, who was supposed to speak. Unfortunately, he had a serious family problem, so I'm here as a coordinator. He is the manager of this project. As you know, the working committee of the Pyrenees has been working on cooperation issues for 30 years. We manage in our observatory over 5 different projects. What are the topics that interest us the most? Creating networks, mainly, and generating knowledge on climate change at the scale of the Pyrenees, in the 4 autonomous regions in Spain, Andorra, and the 2 French regions. And we are also interested in natural and climate risks and how they are increasing due to the effects of climate change. Climate change exists, and we are suffering and seeing this in mountain regions. Monclima, specifically, is a project financed by Interreg for Southwestern Europe. 11 different entities work here from France, Spain, and Portugal. We manage 1.4 million euros of subsidized expenses. Since 2019, we've been working, and given the problems generated by COVID-19, our program has been extended for 1 year, and we will end by the end of 2021. We already have some results. I hope that they are interesting for you. As we all know, when projects end, that's when the results get better. Our main goal is to improve the coordination effectiveness of instruments for prevention, disaster management existing in the different regions. In our project, we do not only focus on wildfires, that's one of the key themes, but we also work on droughts, erosion, and floodings. I was unable to bring a video, but in our website, you can see different videos related to these different risks. There's also an aspect that we are including in our project, multi-risk factors, how these chained risks in themselves can lead to a higher need to understand the complexity of the risk generated by climate change. First, we need to improve knowledge. We need to provide knowledge on the management of these risks. Besides, in the implementation of pilot cases that help us learn, with an analytical component, entities that work together with us in this project are applied research centers and universities. We also have the goal of defining a transnational strategic framework with recommendations to improve in all these things that my predecessors have already mentioned. These cooperation projects need to help in this connection between decision makers, practical experiences. One of the main axes, and this is an important working package, is the transfer of knowledge and networking meetings that I am going to talk about. The first working group focuses on the capitalization. It's a lot of people working, there are many experiences, but we still need to organize ourselves and to put all the information at the disposal of others. Here we try to portray a state of the art of the good practices, experiences, and projects which already exist on natural risks, climate risks, and mountain areas. For us, our leitmotif are mountain areas, and especially we try to systematize all the existing information. We have some results from our report. This report was drafted by the Braganza University. It analyzes over 70 projects focusing on these themes. It has some conclusions, and it also makes use of good practices that are going to be a part of the summary of information that we have already published online. Here you can see, for instance, all the tools that exist in southwestern Europe related to the different risks that I mentioned: droughts, wildfires, floodings. In this browser, there are over 300 layers of information. They have been standardized so that you can see them as a whole. Here you see the detail. Well, that's what we have, but the most important news is that now there's a place that works as a benchmark. There are also tools that help to identify good practices, and we can work with a higher level of detail. Here you can see some of the maps at your disposal with some of the indicators, for instance, about the amount of fuel available, possible erosion, drought frequency. I must say that, of course, here we also include all the climate scenarios to compare what happened, what is our background and the possible future scenarios. Another important leg, which is in production, and which is the result of the capitalization stage. Now we want to create a framework of the recommendations through consultation with technical and political actors in charge of managing different risks. The idea is to draft some operational recommendations, taking into account the different themes that you can see here. For instance, what are the recommendations that we would do to improve the level of knowledge in terms of risks, to reduce vulnerability in terms of impact, and how to improve the resilience of mountain areas. This is an ongoing process. As I was saying, we will focus from now until the end of the process of the project in this. We have already detected the most innovative methodologies. The idea is to promote the implementation of these technologies. Maybe they are not known by everyone. The idea is to promote an active action by the territory and to make that the management of our forest masses be more active, because this is essential for the resilience of our forests. The cross-border dimension is one of the most important questions in our line of work. We also want to work on formulas that allow to share the management between territories, not only in terms of managers, but also including farmers and livestock breeders, with the idea of facing together all these challenges. As you can see, there are 5 pilot cases, 2 in France, 2 in Andorra, and 3 in Spain, which respond to different risks. Again, in each case, the multi-risk factor is included. How can we respond simultaneously to the different processes that are interlinked? I don't think I have much more time, so I'll go quickly over this. In terms of forest adaptation, CREAGI is doing this in the Montnegre corridor in the coastal region in Catalonia. Our previous work of identification of strategic management points has been carried out to see where it would be more efficient to act. New spaces have been opened for pasture lands, to see also how emergency services can be better protected in case of a wildfire, and also in terms of indicators. We still have to confirm the first result, but we see that thanks to this intervention of cleaning the forest, we have a higher level of moisture and a better health situation of forest masses. We are following these indicators, and as I said, these are the first results. We analyze the composition and how the forest mass under intervention has regenerated. We have a couple of interesting interventions in Andorra to see how we can fight wildfires, but at the same time, seeing that the forest can protect other risks, complementary risks. The conclusions of these are essential to see how we can integrate this double perspective on risk in the forest, in the management of forests. This is a place which is close to urban areas with a lot of human visitors, so they are interesting for our conclusions. On the French side, there are two actions, one on the eastern side and another one on the western side. In the eastern side, the most interesting thing is that this follow-up and monitoring has been carried out after an important fire. Here we see the evolution after the wildfire, and we see what the effect is, that what effect it has had on other factors like torrential rains. And after these, we can do a follow-up and a larger analysis to detect regions where there could be a higher risk in case of wildfire, the risk of having interlinked phenomena.
On the eastern side of the Pyrenees, we have a very interesting experience too. Now more inclusive, working with the community, which involves the organization and the awareness raising with the population and the decisions taken in terms of the organization of the territory in the valley of Valentin, so that the population takes into account the risks and also the climate risks. That's what I wanted to tell you. We have the time has ended. I just wanted to say that all this I have already mentioned. We are dealing with this in different seminars. We have already done the third seminar, and the next one is in Bilbao. We're going to be talking about erosion. This is open to anybody who wants to reflect with us. And in terms of as an observatory, we are working on the first Pyrenees strategies in relation to climate change. This has been a really participative process. More than 300 people have participated. Now we're in the final stage. We are including in these strategies how the system of population and territory is key for the whole dynamics for the actions against risk. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you very much, Ms. Garcia Balaguer. All the presentations are going to be shared in video, so anybody who's interested in listening to the session again, who wants to check any presentation, will be able to do it without problems. So now I will ask you to be very brief. I'll be asking some questions about the interventions. I will start by asking Emilio Chubieco. I wanted to ask you, Mr. Chubieco, we've been talking a lot about forest fires, the prevention and the study of forest fires. Could you tell us which are the socio-economic measures that you consider more efficient for the prevention of great cross-border forest fires? That's one of the topics we're researching in our project. Obviously, everything that has to do with the sustainable use of rural resources is key. The people living in the rural areas are the ones that sometimes suffer and sometimes also cause the fires. We have to understand the relationship between the local population, the activity in the rural world, also the demographic changes that we're witnessing in the last decades. I think that's essential to reduce the incidence. Mr. Bill, I've got another question for you. I understand sometimes it's very difficult to be specific. The transfer of technology developed in the project, what would be the key so that the other European countries receive this knowledge from the project? I'm going to answer intuitively. You have to select the experiences that are more adequate and assessing if they fit the countries where we want to transfer them. We want them to be useful, easy to implement, robust, and so on. And we have to have a good look at the place where we want to implement these technologies, because technologies that may be useful in a place might not be useful in somewhere else. And then there's another principle. We mustn't use something that we're not sure if it's going to be something. We must not experiment. If we're going to transfer something, it must have already worked somewhere else. We must look for final uses. We might even involve the final uses from the beginning. Once we know something works, we should understand the other socioeconomic place, its characteristics, its drivers, and its challenges, and go there and try to implement something that has already worked. Finally, Ms. García Balaguer, Steven was talking about specificities. I wanted to ask you about mountain areas. What measures could be adequate to these areas to prevent cross-border fires? The measures are the ones that have already been mentioned. The economy of the rural areas, there should be a management. We need a mosaic landscape. We need the actions that are carried out to be proven. I agree with what Laia has just said. We need to make sure that the actions that have been carried out actually work. We must follow up the pilot projects and assess the benefits of these projects. And the basis of cooperation is sharing protocols, sharing information, sharing ways of working. We've also talked about this. Which are the barriers? Sometimes it's the incompatibility between the radios we're using to communicate. There are many projects that are already working with this kind of compatibilities, and I think now it's the time for dissemination and transfer of what we already know. Well, that's what we're doing now. I don't know if anybody has any comments or wants to add anything to the interventions of other speakers. Well, I want to thank the three of you, Mr. Chubieco, Ms. Estivil, Ms. García Balaguer. Thank you very much for this roundtable, and thanks to the rest of the participants. So the meetings, one-to-one meetings are still on. You can book them through the platform. Otherwise, we meet tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the morning. Thank you very much to you all.